Welcome everyone to Grape Finance's weekly AMA. I'm Nikki and I'm here with LB. Welcome LB.
Hey guys, thanks for listening in.
Definitely, we have some of our community already in, even though it's not a good time for the US. But I guess our other community members are here. Happy to see you all. And still, I'm sorry for the US people. We'll definitely do an AMA again at a time which is more US friendly. But for right now, this will have to do.
Stuff, as I said last week too.
Stuff. Yeah. Well, but we're happy with our US crew as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got some questions that I'm going to go over and see what it's gonna be. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, first off, there was a question from Old Rope that was actually being responded to by now, but I just wanted to add for anyone who wants to pose a question. If you're too late to post a question in the AMA questions, you can always just join the live chat. And the difference between the live chat and the AMA questions beforehand is that if you put it in beforehand, then we'll definitely answer it. If you put it in the live chat, then we'll answer it if we get to it. So that's why I make the distinction. But other than that, I mean, you're always welcome to ask your question. It's not that we're not going to answer stuff. This one, though, has been answered, so I'm just going to move on. Starting with our very own Sam21. Will Vinium launch on Optimism? The Dune analytics show that the battle between Optimism and Arbitrum is getting interesting. Wouldn't hurt to be both on both the chains in case either or any one of them take off, like Polygon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. Optimism is definitely on the list too. I think they're pretty solid Ethereum layer 2, and we're going to go to Arbitrum first, but Optimism is definitely on the list because I think they'll definitely be around for the next while at least. Like they're a solid team. They have a lot of solid protocols on there, so we're definitely going to go there for sure.
Yeah, it's basically they both do similar things, so you never know which one is going to take off. Right? It's just there's so many random factors that factor in. Okay, moving on to Big Wappuccino saying, "Hi guys, I understand revenue sharing for wine holders from Vinium will be in the form of Vini receipt tokens. As someone who has only ever held wine and never sold it, I'd rather see revenue directly sent into wine instead of through a third means to see some form of price action, as from my point of view, the former just incentivizes us to use Vinium and to not use such a strong term, but abandon wine in the long term. Please enlighten me." Oh, this is an interesting question with a lot of factors to it. So maybe you want to start this off.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, is he mentioning that he would prefer to see like a buyback of wine instead?
That's what I read it as, so that you basically take the Vinium rewards and then sell them to buy wine. That's what he prefer, as I see it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's definitely an option. I know that's happens with a lot of different share coins. Like I know FXS Frax Share does that, and a few other protocols do that to distribute revenue. That's definitely a way we can do it. I mean, I do like the flexibility of just giving people the receipt tokens, which is actually interest bearing blue chip coins that you can then continue to hold. You can then extract for the underlying USDC or whatever. Then you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, I like that flexibility. And I think that still delivers value. Like it essentially delivers the same value to wine anyway, but with extra flexibility.
Yeah.
But there's also maybe some legal issues with that, if
Is
you know what
there?
I mean. Like, because
Oh,
it's
yeah, for
technically like,
taxes.
yeah, taxes, and also it's like almost, I mean, depending on which country you are, it's maybe uh like a dividend, which, I don't know, then there's legal implications around that. Whereas like a buyback is kind of just, you know, avoids that. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's an option. We can, because then we would, but then the issue, I guess, is that in order for you to profit, actually extract profit from then, you would sell the wine that you would get. Because, we would
Yeah.
buy back the wine. Maybe there's some burn percentage in there too, and then distribute that bought back wine to the stakers. But then, how do you get your profit from that? Well, you either
You
hold
said
it or
it.
you're going to sell it. So essentially, it's just kind of, it evens out a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Um, whereas distributing the tokens directly, you you still add value to one because it's a yield bearing token, and it adds flexibility that you can do whatever you want with those tokens. You can buy wine yourself with it,
Yeah.
and there's no
Yeah,
sell pressure.
I really like I understand that maybe in some systems or countries it might seem that if you just hold a token and that token increases in value, then I mean there are some taxes that won't happen or whatever. But basically what we'd then be doing is taking what I would view as a superior way of doing things and making it less good simply because some countries have weird tax systems. And that is, I kind of resent that a little bit because we're looking in DeFi, we're trying to make new forms of economics and trying them out and see how that works for everyone, for us, and how we can make things communal. At least that's the way I look at it. Like, hey, we try revenue share, so we want to share with the community, so to have a fairer economy, basically. Even though it's only in a small environment, just our ecosystem, but still, that's what we're looking at, and then we would already. Make that less good. There's a good word for it, but I can't really find it right now. Um, we would already make that less good and compromise that. That's the word I was looking for. We would already compromise that based on tax system of some countries, and that kind of is sad for me. And I feel personally, if you just hold your wine and then you get, for example, Vinium BTC, or you get Vinium USDC, or you get all of that, that's a lot more fun because then you can go and look at your dashboard and see, hey, I've got collateral now, and you can either sell the collateral or borrow against it, or you can just let it stay there and have it increase in value. I don't know. It just seems a lot more fun to me than having to sell your wine and being in that market of, hey, yeah, to take profit, I need to dump on my favorite token. So, like that's not it's not where you want to go for what I feel. But there's definitely something to be said for either way. I mean, with Artsy, we are going to do the buyback and reflect to share via the token. I mean, it's not that it's a wrong move. It's just that maybe for wine it won't work. But yeah.
It's they're both valid options. I mean, I'm leaning towards. I mean, the original plan is to go towards distributing the the receipt tokens. And things, at the end of the day, it's software, and if people really want a buyback and burn scheme instead, it can be adjusted in the future. So, we're flexible.
Yeah, we can always do that. And that's also a thing, right? It depends on how you interpret taxes as well, because these tax systems that we're talking about have not been developed with DeFi in mind. So there's a lot of interpretation going on as well. Moving on to Neat Grape saying, "Hey, Ladybug, with the this is a good one. With the vineyard ending soon and all this talk of a new grape model, do you anticipate a new / updated roadmap in the coming month or so?" Yeah, this has been asked recently, and then the update would be soon. So how soon is soon?
Yeah, pretty soon. Within the month, definitely a roadmap for the year, which will include Vinium sort of stuff as well, and winemaker as well. So that will be released very soon.
Pretty soon.
Yeah.
All right. Then we move on to Neat Raisin saying, "Hey, little bull." All right. there's a contradiction in there somewhere. But anyway, will there be some type of incentive for investors to migrate from the nodes to press? Like a 10% bonus for winery collection holders, or maybe 5% for all others? Well, that's question one.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd like to, we're dealing with limited resources in the nodes. Like, obviously, with the nodes, it's going to be difficult to give people an extra bonus on top of their amount, if you know what I mean. Because where is that going to come from? That's really the issue. And the incentive really is because everybody's been asking for it, because everybody doesn't like the nodes anymore, because they have the yields have dropped. So it's really the incentive is, well, now you can have some yield instead of having no yield.
Yeah, just move on to the better system, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. The second question is, will investors be given an option to exit out with what they have remaining left if they do not want to migrate? Yeah, that's always there, right?
Yeah, that's likely an option too. Although if you have already, by remaining, it doesn't mean you're going to get the 300% return in back, especially not in dollar value. I think people need to be realistic and think, like, where is that dollar value of 300% return going to come from? If that's what you think it would be given as, like, that's your remaining. Because from the beginning, nodes are always like a locked pool. So the idea that essentially you would be, it's like how we ended the wine nodes before, and then the grape Horus nodes recently. You would be able to get whatever you deposited in back. But if you've already claimed more than you have deposited, well, then there is essentially nothing to be given back, and then you may as well actually just go to the press, because you can get an extra bonus then.
Okay. Yeah. So, like always with this question, it's just yes, you can exit out, but you would have less than if you want to migrate. If you migrate, you get a better option. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry if I missed anything in that recap, but
No.
I think I got it.
That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then we're moving on to number 3. This is kind of a it's a list. Can you give a quick breakdown of the utility for each token within the Grape ecosystem? And then he lists Grape, X Grape, Wine, G Bond, Vintage, S Vintage, Raisin, Vinny, and anything else. So we can go over this, but maybe we shouldn't start with Grape, but maybe start with Wine, because Wine basically is the share token that starts it all, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you have
Yeah.
wine, then you're allowed seigniorage when Grape is printed. If you have wine, then you're allowed revenue um, for Vinium. So wine is basically saying, "Hey, I got a share in Grape Finance, and I want some of the sharings." Um, and then Grape obviously is the token that prints. I mean, you were thinking to change Grape into maybe a different type, but as it stands now, Grape, if it is above $1 or above 1 MIM, then it prints, and that's what it does. And of course, it has a lot of utility for using it within the system. So if you want to play games or if you want to buy something else, you can use Grape for that, or earn Grape for that even. And then X Grape is a way. It has multiple functions, and I'll be add some things if you want to, but it has multiple functions. It makes sure that the grape that is within the X grape, because it's a form of wrapping, is in an LP. So that means the more X grape there is, the more solid the grape actually is, because there's more liquidity of it. Also, of course, X grape is a token that you can borrow against, and also keeps appreciating whenever more people buy it and sell it, because it has an always up tokenomics within it. So basically, if you have grape, whether it's printed or wherever you got it from, and you put it into X grape, then you can just stay liquid by borrowing against it. So X-Grape is sort of a way for Grape to stay high once it gets high. And basically what I would have wanted or would have loved is for X-Grape to be there when Grape was still above $1, and Vinium to be there when Grape was still above $1, because I wonder if we'd have seen the same sort of sell-off that we've seen if that would already be in place. But we're here now. But what we have seen is that Grape has been appreciating somewhat in the last few weeks, days, and X Grape also has been appreciating somewhat, and wine has been appreciating somewhat. So we are moving upwards slowly again, which is very nice. And that with the whole way that X Grape works means that it could just stay there. It doesn't need to go down, because people don't necessarily have to sell. Going on for G Bond, that's what you can buy now. If you want, you can buy G Bonds, and it's basically saying, hey, I trust fully that Grape will get back above PEG. That's what you're doing when you're buying G Bond, because that G Bond is just buying, basically burning Grape and making sure that you can only get that Grape back if it is above PEG with newly printed Grape. So G Bond is a burning mechanism, basically. It's a faith in the future and a burning mechanism for the protocol. Then we move on to Vintage and S Vintage, and Raisin and Vinny. And I think here I'm going to give the mic to you, because I might miss a few things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, there were good explanations for those main Grape ecosystem tokens. Now, Vintage, S Vintage, Raisin are part of the winemaking game, of course. And Vintage is the main earning token within the game. So the game is a good mechanism for or a good fun utility for Grape essentially as well. But it's also its own thing that can essentially be a standalone product itself. So Vintage is the main game token that allows you to do a few things within the game, like so essentially right now is to mint tools that can increase your vintage output. But the main use comes with Raisin, where it loops in together, where you can make an LP, vintage MIM, and then mint a Raisin with that, which is an illiquid token, so you can't sell it, but it's used within the game directly to recharge your characters, your vintners, so that they can continue to grind and work, and also upgrade your skills as well, so that they can you can have different benefits from that. So, and then S Vintage is a sort of like a lock mechanism of Vintage to benefit from other players in the game too. So S Vintage is essentially a lock mechanism for Vintage, but it's a way to it has been a way to earn wine with as well over the past, essentially since the game started, really. Maybe a few weeks after the game started, you've been able to earn wine using S Vintage, which has actually been one of the highest yielding pools for that for wine too over the time. So, I mean, if you were in the game and earning, decent vintage, you could have converted that to S Vintage, staked that in the wine pool, and earned a pretty decent amount of wine from just that over the time period. And that was the highest yielding pool in the farm too. So it comes back to Raisin being the main game token. There's kind of a new experiment that we shifted, because we initially started with Grape, obviously, being the main game token. But we shifted to Raisin so that we can have more flexibility, in other words, and get LPs as part of the minting of that. So we can actually have multiple tokens being used within the game, essentially, instead of just Grape. So I think it did well. I think it's done well. I think there's a few adjustments I need to make to it, but I think the idea of a liquid token that's essentially like an abstracted layer on top of whatever token you want to actually use in the game, well, then you route through Raisin to do so. And I think that's a decent mechanic that has worked out well, but there's some adjustments to be made there anyway. But
Yeah, what kind of adjustments would you be thinking of, or just in general? I don't mean specifics, but
yeah, well, I
what do you
think
think of?
obviously adjustments initially is price wise to kind of recalibrate the cost of Raisin, because right now it's a manual process, and if you want to mint Raisin, it varies on what type of LP you want to actually use too. So that needs to be recalibrated to also be below the price of unstaking vintners, because there's a mechanic in the game where you can recharge by resting, or it's almost as well cheaper to unstake and then not recharge, or recharge just with your vintner staked and not the tools, etc. There's a few ways to think about it, but if we want to encourage, essentially save people on gas, on AVAX gas, and also encourage minting a Raisin for POL and extra burn and whatnot, then we need to keep the price of Raisin below the estimated price of recharging, of unstaking, I mean. So that's like a general one. But as well, I'd want to have a few more sort of like mini games or like add-on games, like a quest system for the game, where you utilize Raisin within there, and also Vintage as well within Raisin to sort of create more of a tighter loop for the game, so that you're not just stuck with a whole bunch of Vintage that you can't really do much with. That's kind of the main thing we're working to solve.
All right.
Oh,
Thanks for those extra explanations.
Yeah.
Oh
No,
yeah, you had one more
then
thing.
Vinny.
Yeah.
Vinny is specifically for Vinium. It is the main incentive token for the platform. So as with anything in DeFi, you kind of need to have some incentive for people to provide liquidity, because there's a lot of options, and unless and there's some risk to providing liquidity anyway, at least as a base level, a smart contract risk. So if there is no real benefit to providing liquidity, well then why would anyone do it? And this is why you're seeing, most exchanges, you at least have the fees as a base level of liquidity, and we do have that in Vinium as well. You at least earn the fees, the interest, but a lot of the time you also have token incentives as a extra benefit for people to provide liquidity. And that's essentially what Vini token is, to at least in the initial stages, to incentivize liquidity, and then also provide stakers of that token with a share of revenue from the platform too. So that's like creating the loop of you earn the token, you can stake token and earn the revenue from the platform as well. So that's the main that's the Vini token, essentially a breakdown of that.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's get things going again, because I mean, this was a long explanation from me and then a long explanation from you. But at least it's good to cover things once in a while. Moving on to which token within the ecosystem is most important for protecting the future of Grape? Which token is not a priority and will have the least impact on the future of Grape?
Yeah,
I would say Grape or X Grape are the most important for protecting the future of Grape, right? Because if wine means that you get a portion of those tokens when they're good. So wine is not the main one, but it's the most interesting one as I'm concerned, as far as I'm concerned. But it's not the main one. The main one is Grape or X Grape, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I'd maybe also add in you could add in Raisin into that as like as an extra to have an extra use case of Grape and LP that is not directly tied to the seniorage side of anything, but it's also a nice way to utilize it.
Yeah, most certainly. Okay, and which one is not a priority or have the least impact on the future of Grape? Yeah, that I guess would be Vintage or Vinny or something. I mean, they are good tokens, but they don't really have an impact on the future of Grape. It's the other way around. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we move on. And what revenue streams can we look forward to for the future of Grape? So aside from Vinium, that is, I guess, are we going to have other revenue streams? Well, you did do some investing, right?
Yeah. Well, we have some funds in a bot, which is also essentially not only a bot; it's also more like a fund, you could say, which is good. I'd prefer that, to be honest, than just a standard bot. So that's technically like revenue for Grape, but we're also looking at. There's been some interest for opening that up to the public, so that the community can also input some funds into that and have some share of that too. Obviously, as like we get a larger pool together and invest in a couple of things. So that's also another quite possibility. Obviously, Vinium is kind of like the main revenue source. That is kind of an application. And at the moment, that's kind of what we're focusing on. We're not trying to spread ourselves too thin. We'd kind of want to focus on making revenue in these areas that we've already kind of focused on, and actually provide revenue in them first before we, have like 40 different revenue streams, each with like 3 cents of revenue, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it also needs to grow a little bit. I mean,
Exactly.
I've seen Vinium from when it was moved from public beta to where it is now. I've seen it double in size. I mean, it went from was somewhere around 40,000 to somewhere around 80,000. Which might not seem like much in the world of DeFi, but it is a doubling, and that is good. And I think that if it continues doing that, if it continues increasing that way, if it occasionally doubles, whether that's every month or whenever, then at some point it will grow bigger and therefore more trustworthy, because as soon as it's bigger, it's easier to cut your tokens out if you want to.
Yeah.
That's the way these platforms work. And to jump from growing that or from focusing on that to all kinds of different stuff is not necessarily beneficial. But once it is big, of course, we should go and look at other stuff. And I really like this idea of having some sort of a pool where we communally invest. But we've already discussed that, I think, a couple of months ago in an AMA, and I still like the idea. I just would wonder how it would take form, but it's a cool thing to do, right? To just
Yeah.
with all of us say, hey, this is how we're gonna work it, and then because all together we're one big whale, right? Where individually we don't have a lot of impact, and whales can just more easily trade. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
They get OTC deals. They can influence markets. There's a whale just overall usually does better.
Yeah.
Okay, moving to Disco Chuck saying, when the nodes get moved to an existing press, will the lotto of that press be flipping bonkers that day? Also, I'm pretty sure I recall there being a separate press being for ED, specifically for the transition. So perhaps this whole line of inquiry is moot.
Well, I'm wanting to get it inside the soda press, preferably, so that it's all in the one thing, because then it helps with boosting the share value of the entire pool, rather than diluting it across multiple presses, in other words. So I mean, that in doing so, yeah, it would actually put the lotto quite high that day, and it would also boost everybody that's already in the pool's shares by quite a bit too. So there are benefits to that.
All right. Then we move on to Neat Grape, who has another interesting name for you. Hey, Literal Bear. Literal Bear. Is there any plan to reconnect with our friends at Dex Finance with the introduction of their newly renovated vaults, some of which are designed to help Tomb folks support pack tokens?
Yeah, I've spoken to or I speak to Dex, the people from Dex every now and then. They've definitely spoken about the vaults too. Obviously, the issue is that our emissions are ending So I mean, what are we going to be vaulting? In other words,
Have ended, right? Haven't they
yeah.
ended yet? They have ended.
I need to double check the contract because
Okay.
the actual time stamp is on the contract.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so in other words, obviously to have a vault, and I don't think they're on AVAX yet. They said they're coming to AVAX soon. I know they've launched on BSC and whatnot, and the vault's pretty good. Like I'm actually staked in there, but for the vault to actually auto compound, it needs to auto compound something. So it would need some other, it would need to be staked somewhere that has some sort of reward token that can be sold and put back in. The ETFs are another way too. And that also talked to them about that before, and that may be something we do as well because that technically doesn't need incentives. It doesn't need a somewhere to be staked. You can just use the individual tokens, and that actually then has some buying pressure on the tokens if they get out of sync. In the terms of ratios of each other. So, but yeah, I talk to them every now and then as well. So we're still we talk, and anything that can work together, we will.
All right. Yeah. So we are in contact, and that whatever comes out of that comes out of that, and that might very well be good. That's the short version of it. Moving on with Need Money saying, "Hey LB," and he writes it out like LB. The funny thing is, I recently read that L, like EL, was a name for Saturn, and of course Saturn was seen as an ancient god, and therefore we have this elected, elite, and a lot of these words that start with L, elders, and that is a reference to Saturn. So these are the holy people basically in the beginning of our language. Anyway, Saturn's B, with respect to Vinium's rollout, i.e. features. So he means leverage pools, isolated markets, and interest-bearing tokens, and cross-chain growth, which is Arbitrum and others. Which one is taking precedence at the moment? Can you share any updates at this time related to this topic?
Yeah, I guess number one is cross-chain growth. So we're kind of doing a little bit of a push for cross-chain, just to have a base on all these chains. So Arbitrum, we're technically already on, and we're talking to the Arbitrum team about some things we can do there too. Also, hopefully, get some increased liquidity in the beginning, which would be really nice. They put us in touch with some people that can help us with that. But then also another.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's without a token as well, which would be really good. But then the second thing would be adding, adding LPs that are highly liquid, that can be leveraged essentially. So that's something we're kind of working in tandem with cross-chain and leverage pools. So that's kind of why we're also going cross-chain, because there's also a lot of different options on different chains. With different, each chain has different yields and whatnot, and different LPs and different opportunities. So that's kind of goes hand in hand together. And isolated markets are kind of like a bonus thing. That's because isolated markets will include lower liquidity, more riskier tokens that we may work individually with different people, which we've talked to a few people about that too, and that will come sort of once we're a little bit more established on the chains and whatnot. So So yeah, so I think, number one, cross-chain growth, leverage pools, kind of in that together. You could say number two as well, but kind of in that together. And then, isolated markets is more of a bonus feature.
All right, cool. And this actually makes me think of something that I wanted to reflect, but simply haven't. When we're on the Vinium platform, isolated markets is a link there that you can click, and then you get into the Xgrape lending and borrowing. If I look, for example, at Aave, the isolated markets are just in the list. And I think that's chaotic to have them just in the list, but I like the fact that they're on the front page, whereas we sort of put them away. So maybe there's something of an in-between to be found there, like maybe put the isolated markets on the bottom or something, or on the top, so that they're a bit more visible.
Yeah, definitely. There are some UI changes that need to be made, and sort of I want to do more of a refresh of the UI and kind of the design too. And something we'd like to aim towards doing eventually, really, or kind of end goal is to have the like a one page for all of the chains. So you have,
that's nice.
Liquidity. So it shows the main blue chip tokens. It shows the liquidity and it shows the amount that exists on all the chains just on one page, and then there'll be more information of how much is on each chain, obviously, but in terms of making it nice and clean and unified, it's kind of like a one-page deal instead of them having to go to I'm on Avalanche, I'll go to check out the ETH chain or whatever and see different things. I'd like it to all be on the one page.
Yeah, and then just have it clearly stated, like this is on this chain, this is on this chain. Yeah, that's nice. It's a nice idea. Okay, and then next one is Saint saying, "Hey, long boy, Avalanche seems to really be picking up their gaming presence, and how can we get Winemaker on the radar?"
Yeah, I mean, AVAX has kind of positioned themselves for a while now, actually, about being a gaming chain, and I mean, there's good reason for it. They have the subnets too, which can also is kind of depending on what the game is like, can be really good for the game itself, like for the utility of the game and how the game runs and all that. And that's also something that's an option for us to do with Winemaker. And I think one of the main ways we can get on the radar, obviously, is we're going to be unveiling a bit of a plan to kind of update things on the game and take it a little bit further, revamp things. And obviously as well, we're already in touch with the Ava Labs team. We haven't really lent on them for anything so far, more just like just having the contact. But they're there when for when we need them, and they're definitely willing to help. So when we're ready, we'll definitely lean on them for any sort of support on that end, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to. Especially if we do it on a subnet, they'd be like, "Wow, you guys they love stuff on subnets." So
that's what they like. And then maybe we should update the Winemaker game to run on Unreal 5 engine. That would be nice.
Yeah.
To walk through the fields.
Yeah. Would be cool.
But maybe that's a bit of a lot of work. But I mean, it's an idea. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, it would be cool. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on to the live chat as it goes. Oh yeah, by the way, I also wanted to because at first I read the question wrong about Avex picking up their game. Avex is also picking up their price, just like BTC is, and all of the things are. So I thought it was about that. And I back when I was still learning about crypto, I used to follow Alex Becker.
Oh yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think he's a really funny guy. He makes a lot of, he makes fun of everyone. But one of the things I learned from him, I learned a couple of things from him. And one of the things I learned from him is that he says, yeah, well, usually back then it was true that way. It might not be entirely true now, but back then he said, yeah, first Bitcoin moves, then about 2 weeks later, the alts move. And sometime after that, the microchips move. And I would say by now, Bitcoin and the alts move in conjunction. They basically there's no time difference between those anymore. I don't. There we can talk long or short about why that is, but that's not really important. But there's definitely a time delay between Bitcoin and the major alts, or the blue chips, as you call them, and the microchips, which we are. And as such, I do think that any kind of bullish move for such blue chips is good for us, even if then later there comes a fall again, um, uh, because people then have had their rise on the blue chips and are then, oh, okay, this blue chip is not working anymore, but the microchip's turn is now. So I think there is definitely a correlation there, but that was me misreading the question and answering that. But I just wanted to, it's a tangent that
makes perfect sense. It's like people rotate. They rotate out of stuff that's pumped like 100%. They rotate into stuff that hasn't pumped yet because it's kind of the same liquidity, just rotating through the market.
Sort of, yeah. And the funny thing is that, and this is what we've seen back in spring, is that if we do it right, then if we get rotated in, then there is no real reason to rotate out of us anymore. There was eventually a reason in the summer for people to rotate out, but we had a good long run where people just didn't rotate out, even though there was a lot going on. Even though Ukraine got invaded and everything, people just didn't rotate out. They just rotated in and just stayed there. And I think if we have another inwards rotation, especially with what we have now, might be really good for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the AMA live chat. Get well soon, Saint. I already said that, but I think I should have it on the AMA too. Dirk O's says, "Hi, lucent brain." This is it's not lucid, it's lucent, and I think that means it's also something of divinity. I think lucentius means, well, it doesn't really matter, but I think it's a divine thing. How many projects can you effectively work on simultaneously? And he said, I googled the answer. 5. Interesting in the concept of context of developing Grape Finance Finium while researching other possible interactions with multiple others. And he also puts there a link about burnout, juggling multiple projects and burnout. Well, I guess this is not really a question, but maybe something, we can talk a little bit about. We have about 10 minutes for the official time, so yeah. What do you think? How many projects can you work on simultaneously?
Yeah, I mean, I think from last year as well, I learned that it's really you don't want to be spread too thin. It's not it's not conducive to anything beneficial. I think 5 is like the max. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do more than 5. I think, but you don't want to just do one as well. I think you would. You also need like maybe two or three is kind of good, so that you can have some variation and also take things that you've learned from other things and put them into the other things. So I think what we have now is good anyway. So we've got grape, vineyard, and so winemakers. Well, you could include those as 3 separate projects, but also related projects. So I think that's a good balance.
Right. Yeah, I kind of agree. I have had a moment where I had 5 crypto projects at once, and that was really, really tiring. I was very close to burnout then, I think. But basically, 5 projects, if you're just not saying, hey, 5 work projects, that's I think a pretty good answer, because right now, for example, I've got this thing that we're doing with our truck that we're building on. That's a project. It's not a crypto project, but it's a project, and it takes a lot of my time. So yeah, having 2 or 3 crypto projects, I think, is all right. Unless one of them grows really, really big, then I think you should just have 1, or maybe 2, like having some sort of fun extra. But 5 projects in general, considering everything, I think it's pretty good. Also, I've clicked the link. I have not read it, obviously, because I'm in an AMA. But when it comes to burnout, I've seen a lot of that because I've worked in healthcare, so I saw clients with burnout, but I've also worked in healthcare, so I saw a lot of colleagues with burnout, and it's really it's a tough thing because it's a bodily reaction that seems to be psychological, but it's not. It's really your hormones literally overloading you with stuff, and don't get yourself in burnout. Get out, because otherwise you will get sick, and you will get out eventually anyway. So take care of yourself. Saying wake up with Grape 5 a.m. is US friendly. Early bird gets the worm. Awesome. I think you're on the east, though. The east is probably on the east, because for the west, it's in the middle of the night. But it's nice. I like it. I like the early risers. Good going. He also has a question: is it possible to make a liquid staking token for wine now that it'll be fully diluted soon? So S-wine. What would that do? What would that do? Yeah, that's my first question. He is typing, so maybe he'll answer that question.
I mean, if you did a locking mechanism on it, and then you did a maybe some buyback and burn into it, you could do a locked version S-wine with like the staked wine essentially. But I don't know, it's possible. But
it's possible. It seems a bit chaotic to me, because the reason why it seems chaotic is if we want to reward people with, for example, Vinium versions of tokens, then how is that going to happen? Because then if you have S-wine, then you're no longer targeting a certain wallet. So how then? How would that be shared? So I think of course it can happen, but I don't really see a reason. Because just stake your wine and you're good. Anyway, Saint also says that the East Coast is the best coast. Neat Grape says, of course, I didn't consider the emissions thing with DAX. I guess when Grape Mim can be incentivized for extra yield, that could have a double whammy for Grapefold. Yeah. Okay. Neat Grape also says, I know Nikki's becoming a hermit and a fan. But do you have any exciting travel plans this year, LB, or any big destinations to tick off the list? We weren't able to travel for a couple of years. First off, I might start living in a truck, which is much bigger than the usual van, but we're definitely not becoming a hermit. By the way, we are going to be very social, and we're going to meet a lot of people while traveling. But question stands: do you have any travel plans, LB?
Yeah, actually, I think as Nigre mentioned, is a fellow Aussie. We have been locked down for a long time. Obviously, not actually. The lockdowns have ended like for over a year now, anyway. But in terms of being able to leave Australia, we actually weren't able to leave Australia for a couple of years, and I will do some travel this year. I will be going to a couple conferences around. Probably go to Dubai in March for a couple conferences there. East Dubai is one of them. It's like a developer-focused conference, and then I'll likely head to Europe for a couple conferences there. One of them being the Avalanche Summit in Barcelona. I'd really like to go to that. I think it's one of the major Avalanche conferences, and so I think that would be really good for networking and to also meet a lot of people from essentially it is networking, but to meet a lot of people from the Avalanche team, and as well all the projects building on Avalanche. I think it'd be good to go and meet and connect. So
yeah, definitely.
we'll do some travel. Yeah, obviously, the idea is to the best thing is that you can continue to work, at least what I do, completely online from a laptop, which is fantastic. So I can, go to conferences around the world and still work at the same time. And essentially, the conference is also part of work anyway, because it's a bit of networking.
Yeah, it's also work.
Yeah. But it's fun work, and I've looked for conferences in Australia, and there aren't too many. Like, I think there was like one NFT conference in Melbourne, the other city, late last year, but it's like really NFT focused, not like NFT financial stuff, more like NFT art, which we're not really. It's not something we're really doing, and there's also more kind of like banking blockchain focused stuff, which we're also not really into. We're more like
lending and borrowing is similar, or am I looking at it in the wrong way?
Yeah. That's more like DeFi. I'm more like blockchain services for businesses to put their their systems on a blockchain, more like on the enterprise blockchain, rather than DeFi stuff, where things like the ETH conferences, like the ETH Dubai that I'll be going to, is like pretty heavily focused to DeFi specifically, which is basically what I'm interested in and what we are doing as well. So it's like directly focused rather than being like enterprise blockchain with IBM doing accounting for Deloitte on the blockchain, which it's like it's cool and all, but it's not really what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool. These are really cool plans, by the way. Yeah, awesome. And I don't know, might steer my house that way when that time comes. I mean, Barcelona is not that far.
Well, there. Obviously, we'll. I mean, I'll be in Europe for a little while because there's a few conferences around during the summer, which is basically when I'll be going. So, we'll meet up for sure.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. Finally have dinner at some point. Yeah. Cool. Does it mean you're going to be doxing yourself if you're hanging out at conferences? Is a question.
Well, the thing is, I've already doxed to multiple businesses that we worked with, like Chainlink, for example, and businesses and other projects as well. That's something I've already done. And it's possible as well that I do it publicly especially for Vinium. But it's also, I think, there is benefit to it, but there's also, it comes with a bit of a target if you do it publicly. That I don't know if it's 100% worth it. You know what I mean? It's really I have no problem doing it, and I prefer to do it for businesses and investors that we work with, and other projects we work with. But publicly, it comes with a bit of a target, and not just from public, but also from governments.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? We should consider that, for example, the developer who created Tornado Cash was when he developed that, he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just creating an anonymity tool, and eventually the governments decided that since an anonymity tool can be used to launder money, that this anonymity tool was a criminal enterprise, and then the developer got arrested. And that's the kind of thing that's a bit scary sometimes, and I get that. So because governments can just decide that
Exactly.
that something is just a project non grata, so to speak, and then they'll take out the developer by arresting them. And I was pretty shaken by that happening, really.
I know, right?
It's a sad thing, yeah. Like, why? I mean, it's already bad enough that USDC says, well, any wallet that has had interaction with Tornado Cash is out. That's already quite heavy. That's freezing accounts. It's very how do you say that? Totalitarian, I would say. But to take out the developer and arrest them, even here in the Netherlands, because that's where it happened. I think that's kind of insane, and I'm starting to see the benefits of not doxing, and I'm not sad that I doxed. I'm actually very happy about it. I feel very comfortable just being myself online and anywhere. And no, I don't like secrets. It's just not the type of person I am. But at the same time, I can really see the argument, especially if you actually wrote the code. Because I can always say, yeah, well, I just like the team and I was on there working for it, but I don't know the code. You can't say that. And that makes a difference. At the same time, though, we are acting in good faith, and we are not specifically creating anonymity tools or whatever. So our being targeted like that is far less likely. So would be cool if you'd be doxing. I mean,
I
could
think
finally
I've definitely
make some.
contemplated it, and I think as well. I mean, but you can also look at we operate in DeFi, which is still technically like gray area from government regulations, especially to US citizens. You can look at GMX and Gains, two of the probably most popular DeFi protocols. Their whole team is completely anon, and they're still probably the most used protocols that exist in DeFi. Not the like one of the most top 10, but it's kind of for good reason, because I'm pretty sure operating perpetuals is kind of like pretty gray area securities, unlicensed securities trading. So I think that's kind of like main reason that they are not doing it. But that's just saying that, you know, those protocols that are very highly respected and very well used have fully anon teams, and you know, obviously they would, and that's publicly anon, but I'm sure if I'm sure they go to conferences and they talk to other businesses and whatnot, and they obviously don't like wear a mask or something, like wear like a
there's
full-
layers of anonymity, right? There's public anonymity, there's personal anonymity, there's anonymity within the team or not.
Yeah.
You know, there's layers. There
Yeah.
can be all kinds. Yeah, well, it's I think in the end the decision needs to be made for the person themselves, and you make yours, I make mine, and I think all of that's good. The most important thing is that we just say what we do, and you know, just be trustworthy, and I think that's what we've done. So that's good, and that's the important part.
Yeah.
All right. I think that kind of was it. Some jokes around, which is always good. Yeah, so basically I'm gonna end it here, and would definitely want to thank everyone for posing questions again. Thank you for taking your time again, and just wish everyone a great day, and let's see what the emission ending of wine will bring our protocol. That's actually something that I just don't know. The wine has been going up for the last couple of weeks, but it hasn't been. Well, it has almost been doubling actually. Well, it has been doubling, but it hasn't been surging back to like $100 or something. So let's just see what happens, and I'm hoping it'll be good.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you so much, everyone, and until next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.